pause this program to celebrate 20 years of public access television through suburban community channels. Join us as we journey back in time to revisit the early days of Ramsey Washington Cable Commission's public access operation. The following mini documentary not only celebrates the 2004 20th anniversary of SCC, it also serves as a visual thank you to the many individuals, communities, and cable companies that have contributed to the success of suburban community channels. Now, let's begin where it all began, with that one simple question that was on everyone's mind in the early 1980s. What the heck is public access television?
In the early days of public access, there was sort of this identity crisis it had, or kind of a who am I, or what are we, or do we matter, or does anybody care?
Because what's cable? Nobody knew cable, nobody knew how it started, what it's doing.
It really didn't have a definition of what it should be, what it shouldn't be.
It's hard for the public to get a grip on what this public access thing is, you know. It's public access is kind of like the library in that we check out the book, but we don't read it to you. And you can come in and you can make anything you want, or you can participate with helping make programs that are produced by other people.
That's the picture of the truck. And these were that's George Stoney with Mark Hotchkiss and me. Access actually had been around for probably, by the time Ram Wash came around, over 10 years. George Stoney had pretty much started the concept out in New York. We were in the area office, and it was our job to set each of the franchise areas up. And at some point, we knew the main office was gonna close, and we needed to get off at some bus stop so that we would have jobs for the future. And Ram Wash seemed to be the right place to do it. It's a lot of cable history that went through there. Group W, Cable TV North Central, which is also known as Hauser Communications. Then it was Meredith. Meredith was purchased by Continental, then it was US West for a short period of time, which was bought by Media One. Media One was bought by AT&T, and now it's Comcast. Group W came in here in '82. That was when we turned Columbia Heights on. Ramsey Washington was 2 years later in '84. Part of the franchise proposals were very specific about what each of the companies proposed to the cities they were going to give them. So we had a boilerplate of there's going to be this many studios, there's going to be this kind of equipment in each of the studios, there's going to be this much portable equipment. Way back when the communities got together and they had to come up with $1,000 to start this organization, this Joint Powers. And the elected officials were the signers or the starters of this Joint Powers. And once it was going, once there was a cable commission, and I don't know all the legal details, but then they invited in one citizen besides the elected official. Well, I saw it in the newspaper, I applied for it, and I was one of the two selected. So we had 12 cities, and we had 2 people from each community, so that means we had 24 board members. And there was no books that you could go to the library and read what cable is, how cable happens, what's going on, how you do access. And so they started an access board, and it was an independent corporation.
The SCC was created as a nonprofit corporation, and didn't actually kind of work side by side with the cable company at that time to help get the public access going. But really the cable company did it at that time, and SCC sort of did some other things and kind of helped along the way, but eventually the cable company transferred that public access function to SCC completely, and so that was the nonprofit corporation here in the mid-'80s that took over the public access function eventually. It actually officially happened probably around 1992. And then after that, the corporate entity, that nonprofit corporate entity, SCC, was merged into the Ramsey-Washington Cable Commission, and the nonprofit was dissolved, but we kept the SCC logo and name, and so that identity remains, all these years later, although the kind of the who does it and how it was structured has kind of changed along the way.
A lot of the commissions, and if you go back and look at the volumes of materials that each of the cable companies put together when they franchised, a large part of those volumes you can find will be, now this is from the company standpoint, the people they went out and talked to about access, whether they were in the community they were franchising, or talking to access groups in Minneapolis or the group in Fridley or whatever. Well, there had to have been a reason for them to go out and see, ask these questions, to make these promises, to say, Ramsey, Washington, you're going to get this many studios and this many porta-packs. And it was because there was a grassroots interest in the area. Well, a lot of that came from the Cable Commission saying, we want this. We want these in your proposal. Tell us what you're going to do.
There was a convention that year, and we learned a lot. Those who went to this convention learned an awful lot about cable, learned there was other people like us. I learned that we were really a rich franchise because we got a bunch of cameras, we got a truck, we got a whole bunch of other things, and some people were starting out with nothing.
A number of the people who are on the commission have also been on the access board, and in some cases they've been on both at the same time, and they've been on subcommittees of those boards, and it's taken a lot of their time. And like George, just to pick on poor George, I mean, he's been doing this since, before access started in Ramsey, Washington. So we're talking, over 20 years that he's been involved.
Down through the years on commissions, we've had attorneys and accountants and CEOs and people like that that have an interest in sharing that experience to make the business end, for instance, of the operation successful. And obviously you have to do that. A lot of us in production aren't too heavy on the business end of this.
All of the people who've served, have played a critical role in the development and continuation of this.
We owe them a debt of gratitude that they had the incredible foresight and the incredible commitment that this was the right thing, this was a righteous thing to do.
It was around 83 or so, 82. I remember the salesman came, to our house. And they went door to door. They weren't doing phone calls at that time. And he was explaining all the packages and everything you can get, and my mother was interested in getting cable. And as an off-the-cuff remark, he mentioned this thing they also have where you can go and make your own TV shows. And I asked him a little more about it, and he said, well, here's a number you can call and, find out about it. And that's how I started.
I think it was 91 or 90. Somebody came round to the AARP meeting, said they're looking for volunteers. The studio, they needed a crew for come to coffee, and 6 of us volunteered. We all came down here. None of us knew anything about it. I'd worked a cine camera, but I never used a camcorder. And Greg was here. He had us all working in about 15 minutes.
My first encounter with public access was with Everyone's Television Channel 33 in Fridley, which was the first access organization in the Twin Cities, and I believe in the state of Minnesota. And I had started working at Anoka County Library, and I worked for Mark Newman Scott.
And at that point, I was working for the Anoka County Library. Part of Access, as you well know, is doing classes, and they asked if I could come down and teach one of the classes. A number of the people in the class liked it. After the class was over, they asked if I could help organize a group so they could continue, and out of that came what was later known as the workshop.
The first time I ever came here, I was invited here by Steve and Brian Gents. I knew Steve from school. He was in a couple of my classes, and I'd always had school with him and stuff. And he said, "Hey, yeah, you're kind of interested in TV stuff, aren't you?" "Yeah, yeah." It's like, "Well, my brother and some of our friends, we're starting a show. We've taken some classes. You should come help out."
I'll tell you this much right now. It's not that easy, especially when you look like me.
Yeah, I already took the basic class and then the camcorder class.
Well, then you just try to get a time slot, man, and come down and just put everything you got into it.
A woman by the name of Caroline Colby. She invited me to MC a production that she was going to have, and get this, it was going to be live. 4 hours live of music. And when I think back now, oh, the things that we did. But she called and asked, and that's when the bug bit, you might say.
Nowhere is the public really have access to the media unless you have money. Access is the only place that you can do that, where all voices are welcome, all people are welcome, and it's the most unique thing that we have in the media, to me. You can't get any more pure than the people talking and their points of view and their ideas. And I think that's why Access is so special.
We're not so much in the TV game, we're really in the empowerment game. We're empowering the community with the, the tools, knowledge, and access to media. And how can that not be exciting?
You can't walk into the broadcaster and say, "Hey, I want a half hour in the studio today to do this show." But it's just part of what cable is now. And especially in the Twin Cities, it's part of what you expect you're going to see.
Like the old village green, where people go down in the evening and could chit-chat about things. You can come into the Access Centre and talk about all kinds of things, local things, and you can put on local stuff that wouldn't normally be in any TV station, stuff that's interesting of all the locals.
Whatever message you want, no matter what it is, you can have as much time as you want. You can talk about it all just to yourself, and it gets out to sometimes 100,000 homes or more. It's just a huge area, considering the fact that it's totally free, and you can make it exactly what you want. You can make it look and sound and it be exactly the message you want, and it's going to get out to everybody. And you can even have it play a couple times a week.
Each circus had its own set of cars.
We are so syndicated, we are so national in scope and international that through Access we're keeping the high neighbor mentality.
That was one of the things you taught in your Access class. You said you're the editor, but it's also your editorial comment. You're the one who chooses, it's not us. We're just showing you how to do this so you can do it, whether you're commenting on the mayor's race or you're going out and covering a football game.
For me, it's been a personal issue because there's been some things we've done on our show, and even at school in River Falls that we want to do, that people are like, no, that's not okay. Who says it's not okay?
This is from the police reports and the DA.
Certainly free speech is a fabulous, incredible thing. I try to tell them, I welcome you to embrace public, the free speech, but also with those rights come responsibilities, and with those responsibilities, you are responsible for what you say, and that could cause some problems for you.
We've had someone on the show that said some things about someone else, and got in a little bit of trouble about that because they weren't true, or whether or not they were true is a privacy kind of a thing. And we hadn't thought about that, but we learned about that. That was an important lesson we learned here.
Staff or the organization is not having a problem with their speech. They have to know that it's somebody out in the community is having a problem with their speech, and it's just staff's responsibility as as the stewards of public access and PEG access to take action and to make sure that they're aware of it. And then it's really between the producer, the speaker, and the person in the community who is offended or sensitized to what they've said.
You want to interest people, but you don't want to upset them. Or maybe upset them a wee bit, but keep them interested.
Above anything else, above all the great equipment that's here, and there's a lot of nice stuff here right now, above all anything else, that's the best part about SCC, is that you really have the freedom to say what you want, and no one's going to tell you you can't.
You may not agree with what I'm saying, but I have the freedom to say it. And I'm not going to lose an advertiser because I say it. I mean, this is the difference between the major networks, you know. Oh, don't say that, we'll lose that advertiser. No, you're free to say whatever you want on here.
And once in a while we get calls about some program that isn't quite up to somebody's standards, or they say something wrong.
We'll see you next week.
And we hear about that more than we do about all the good stuff that happens.
I think that public access is one of the only places where you truly have freedom of speech in its purest form.
Free speech is for everyone, not just for the few.
It was big and it was heavy.
And the machines that recorded were gigantic and
Separate deck you had to carry around, and that was heavy.
haul out a lot of heavy equipment when they were doing a program.
You needed nearly a truck to carry the stuff with you.
It was a 3/4 inch tape, so it was a much bigger tape.
But I said, what are those bricks for building a house? I mean, you know, at some point you need to hold up a 3/4 inch tape and a little DV cam tape and show people what the difference was.
It took a lot more work to make it look good. You couldn't just turn it on and hit all the auto settings and go.
And there was 3 tube cameras who were in the studio, and the technicians and the staff had to always go around and tweak them to get the three different colors to come together and not get people too green or too red or, you know, off. And
that equipment was hard to use, and it deterred a lot of people.
I remember reel to reel where you had to take the tape and we had to wind it around, and there was no such thing as editing. Editing was what we crash edit. And you would hope that the squiggly lines and the breakup between the shots wasn't too bad.
I can remember when the first camcorders came in the early 90s, late 80s, how excited we were not to have to drag all that around anymore.
You've come a long way in the editing suites, and like you say, the camera, the size and the lighting and sets.
The editing hasn't changed so much in the linear end of it, but the nonlinear now brings us to a whole new world where we can produce things that we could do things that we couldn't do back then.
A room full of equipment now is, you know, can be basically replicated in the form of a software program that's on a laptop.
You wonder, about 10 years from now, even 5 years, how many more improvements. It's going so fast. It's just fantastic.
If you stop having the tools that people are asking for, that people want, you really stop being important to the community.
There's got to be a place you can hang your hat and call home, and that's the Access Center. Our goal was to train as many people as possible to make programs that they had the editorial control in, and then the staff would educate them, help them, keep the doors open so they had a place to come and do it.
It's exactly the same thing it was 20 years ago. Open the doors when we're advertised, open the doors, and make sure people understand who are, want to use the equipment, understand how to use it, and answer questions, and then sort of get out of the way.
I still look back on it today as probably being the most satisfying job I ever had in my life up here in White Bear. because the cable company, Group W Cable, was extremely supportive of local programming back then.
The people that were here because they wanted to encourage you. They wanted to help you over the hurdles that they knew you were going to be going over, and to educate you. And they loved what they were doing, and that was very obvious.
If you don't have a sense of sharing, you're not going to last long as a staff person, because it's really all about giving of yourself and sharing with the members of the community who come in.
We need to thank the SCC, especially, I don't want to forget anybody, Luis, Ted, Mindy, Jessica, because as everybody knows here, there is no way we could do it without them, because we ask thousands of questions, and they always answer them, and we are able to produce quality shows because of them.
We're looking for people who were crazy.
They were funny people. They liked to have fun. They didn't take it all too seriously. I think that was the big thing with all of them. Ray, and Mark, they enjoyed what they were doing. You never felt like they didn't like it, and they didn't want you to do things and have fun also. I mean, can you remember some of the shows Ray used to do?
Ray was definitely crazy. We did Microwave X, where Ray had a cooking show and show people how to make concoctions he would put in the microwave and then eat, and he did all kinds of characters. Well, I got into this to do my own programs. I mean, the whole reason I went and taught the class was so that I could use the equipment, so I could make my own programs.
Thank you.
Now, one thing I've always wondered, there are doctors of philosophy, doctors of medicine, various science doctors, dental doctors. Just what kind of damn doctor are you? Before we had actually even hired staff, we had set up the truck. I had hired a couple of technical guys, a master control operator and a tech. So the four of us called up the city and got it cleared that we could take the truck out and park it on a corner. And so the very first show for that franchise area was one of the Manitou Day Parades. So it would have been the one back in the summer of '84.
Had a group of seniors come in, it must have been about 10 to start, and they began to produce a show. Marlis Oliver was the hostess, and the show went for a couple of years. It was really well received. Everybody liked it, and the seniors enjoyed it, and a lot of them continued to produce, including Pat.
It was funny too, when Come for Coffee closed, Greg, when we were more or less at a loose end, what do we do now? And Greg said, make your own show. We can't make a show. Of course you can, I'll help you. So we made a show, the senior scene, and ran that for, I think it must have been nearly 2 years. In fact, I got the award for it. And it was good fun.
One of the things we did was, which is really strange, is we had a radio station for a while. And it was just audio with a character generator, and that worked for a year or two. And then I tried to get them to push. Let's do a visual with it too. So that was kind of the start of the talk shows per se. And we pushed for a long time to have these people come in and do talk shows, live shows.
Well, it was called Let's Talk, and it was a show actually that the title of a show that I had done on KTIS radio when I was there, and so I took advantage of that title, and it was just an interview show, me and a guest, and a sign that we had to hang every time with fish wire, or what do you call it, a string or something like that, and we could never quite get it the same every time. I mean, I think how far we've come. People watch Access, And I think that's very encouraging. I think it's fun to watch the various programs. I mean, some are just really fun and some are really good quality, and then others are still learning. You can tell this. And some are just venting, you know, they're just a cathartic experience.
Yeah, sometimes the programs aren't the best looking, they aren't produced the best, but if you always remember they're done by the public, just like the people watching it at home, you learn to enjoy it. It grows on you. And I think that's what's so wonderful about Access.
Some little gymnastics group did a dance review, and the audio was terrible. The music didn't come through. It was too dark, and the camera was too far away. And there was only one camera. You didn't get any close-ups. So technically, it was not very good, but it had 30, 40 kids on it. And so what they would do is people would call up and say my grandma's coming over for Thanksgiving. Can we play this in the afternoon so she can watch it? Or we're having a party, and can we play this? And the staff played that show an awful lot. And like I said, technically it wasn't great, but it did serve the community. It did do things that were important to those people.
It's nice to know that the hundreds of public access programs found on these shelves are watched and appreciated. But for those of us who work in access, the true beauty lies in its ability to transform lives.
Another thing that I think is important that's a little bit more difficult to see is there's a lot of people, youth in particular, that come to these places that are learning a skill.
I couldn't even imagine what my life would be like if I hadn't been here, and I really mean that. It's easy to say that, but I don't know how else I would have learned the things that I've learned ahead of other people my age, I guess.
Here they're told that they're not told that they can't do something. They're told that, yes, it's possible. That really goes on beyond kind of the conventional thought of what is successful public access. It's not just about communication, it's also about people finding themselves and discovering and growing.
What's no fee? It's great. It's the best. Fantastic. Love it.
I've enjoyed the last 10 years working at this very much, and I would recommend for any older people that it's not anything to be afraid of, and it can be terribly interesting.
I'm hoping that the 20-year thing might provide that moment for other folks, that people can do a stop and think and say, well, yeah, I mean, this has been here for 20 years, and that means that it's, you know, it's here to stay.
This is a great station. It always was.
The congratulations really goes out to the citizens of Ramsey, Washington for supporting these operations for all these years.
20 years is a long time. I hope the community takes that moment to go, wow, this is impressive.
And here's to 20 and more years to come. Congratulations.
All that history on one little tape. And there's still so much more we wanted to include, like the fact that SCC has 2 sister departments. GTN, or the Government Television Network, has been producing local government-related programming for 10 years now. And On Location TV 19 is the community events production department that had the pleasure of putting this program together. In fact, we came across some very rare raw footage from 1988. It appears that Mark Newman-Scott was not kidding when he said he hired people who were crazy. Take a look. It's going to be a great turnout, and somebody else has just pulled up. Let's see who this could be. I'm not sure. Probably one of the thousands of producers we have here at Cable TV North Central. Oh, it's Greg Perkarski! He's a big one. We'll see you in there at the awards, Greg. Good luck to you this year. Well, that's all. That's a wrap. That's a wrap. Thanks for the memories, Mark, and thank you for watching this special edition of Local Image. See you next time.